Hello and welcome to this session. I'd like to welcome you all in our discussion. And our topic of discussion is Aristotle. Since we completed our discussion about Socrates and Plato, and now we'll be discussing about the life and work of Aristotle and his contribution to the Western philosophy. So let's see what we know about Aristotle. Can you tell me who was his teacher? Who was Aristotle's teacher? What was his name?
Sir Plato.
So Plato was Aristotle's teacher, exactly. So here you see in the first slide it says the Greek philosopher Aristotle made significant and lasting contributions to nearly every aspect of human knowledge, from logic to biology to ethics and aesthetics. So you see, he contributed in the logic, he contributed in philosophy, mathematics, arithmetics, ethics, biology, and aesthetics. Though overshadowed in classical times by the work of his teacher Plato, from late antiquity through the Enlightenment, Aristotle's surviving writings were incredibly influential. In Arabic philosophy, he was known simply as the first teacher. In the West, he was the philosopher. So you can just feel that what was his contribution to the Western philosophy and also, I mean, the philosophy overall, all around the world. As you can see, during his lifetime, actually, though the influence of Plato that was matchless, but still, you can see during the time of Enlightenment, Aristotle's works, especially in the Arab world and also in the European countries, they got the prominence and they were much discussed, and most of the books of his writings, those were translated into from Greek or from his language to Arabic language, and from Arabic then it had been translated from Arabic to English and different other European languages. So as you can see, because of his influence in the philosophy, even in Arabic philosophy, he is known as the first teacher. First teacher, that means he's known as the first teacher in philosophy. And in the West, he is known as the philosopher. So you remember that when somebody actually gives you the title, the philosopher, it has some importance because you see that is a definite article, the is there. That means he is the philosopher, the only philosopher, or you can see he is the best of the best. So that's why he's the philosopher. Okay, now we move on to the next slide. Now you see, Aristotle was born in 384 BC or before Christ in Stagira in northern Greece. So he was born in Greece. Both of his parents were members of traditional medical families. His father, Nicomachus, served as court physician to King Amyntas III of Macedonia. So here you can see he was from a very good background. I mean, you can say he was a member of a noble family, and both of his parents actually they were using medicine. So he has some knowledge about the medicine. That's why you can find his contribution in the field of biology and also in medical science. So very much versatile, you can see. And his father, Nicomachus, you can see he was a court physician. That means he was the physician to the King Amyntas III of Macedonia. So king's physician, you can say. His parents died while he was young, and he was likely raised at his family's home in Stagira. At age 17, he was sent to Athens to enroll in Plato's academy. I told you that Plato's name of this school was Academy. Can you tell me what was the name of I mean, Aristotle's school? Do you know the name of the Aristotle's school? What was the name of his school? Plato's school or institute, it was called Academy, and it was in Athens. So when he was 17, he went to Athens and he started studying under the guidance of Plato. So he was a student in the Academy. So can you tell me what is the name of Socrates' school? Do you know the name of his school? He also established a school in his later life. Who can tell me the name of this school? Anyone? Anyone? Okay. His name of the school was Lyceum. Have you heard of it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, he has spent 20 years as a student.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. He has spent 20 years as a student and teacher at the school, emerging with both a great respect and a good deal of criticism for his teacher's theories. So you see, he has studied in the academy for 20 years. So he went to school when he was 17, and then he started in the academy for 20 years. So when he left the school, how old was he? How old was Aristotle when he left the school? Sorry, at 17, he joined the school. At 20, and he studied there for 20 years.
37.
37, exactly. So you can see when he left the academy, he was 37. And he was matured enough by that time. You can feel it. So he was a student, and also he was a teacher. That means he joined as a teacher in the academy. So first he joined as a student, then later on he was appointed as a teacher in the academy. And he was highly respected, and at the same time, you see, he criticized Plato's theories. So he didn't take it for granted. Even his teachers, his masters' theories, he criticized them. He found faults with those theories, and then he explained it in his own way. So he had his own philosophies, and he had his own theories. Plato's own later writings, in which he softened some earlier positions, likely bear the mark of repeated discussions with his most gifted student. So Plato's own later writings, so from his writing, in which he softened some earlier positions, likely bear the mark of repeated discussions with his most gifted students. So you see, when uh, Aristotle actually he criticized the theories of his master. So there is a kind of, you can say, discussions were going on between teacher and students. And sometimes it wasn't in a good way. Okay? So, but in Plato's later writings, I mean, in his writings, he mentioned Socrates, and we can see that he was a little bit soft on him. And he talked about Socrates, and he was one of his most gifted students. So Aristotle was regarded as one of the most gifted students of Plato. And Plato wrote about him in his writings. He mentioned. Now, when Plato died in 347, control of the academy passed to his nephew. It's a very difficult name, Speusippus. See, Speusippus, that's the name of his nephew, and he took control of the academy after the death of Plato. And Plato and Aristotle, after that, actually, he left the school. He left Athens soon after, though it is not clear whether frustrations of the academy or political difficulties, due to his family's Macedonian connections, hastened his exit. So it wasn't. There are controversies, or it's debatable, you can say, why actually Aristotle left Athens at that time after the death of Plato. So some say that he wasn't happy with the transfer of power or control. That is, Plato's nephew took the control of the academy. Maybe he was frustrated because of it. That's why he left the academy and also Athens. Or maybe there were political difficulties because you see, the Athens and Macedonia, they were two different parts at that time. Right now, I mean, uh, that was, though actually they were neighboring countries, but they didn't have good relation. But you can see Aristotle, he was from Macedonia, but he was in Athens. So Athenians, they didn't like, at that time actually, they hated people with the Macedonian connections. So maybe that is another reason why Aristotle left Athens, because there were some kind of political difficulties. So maybe his life was threatened. So that's why he left Athens. So these are the two reasons. that historians actually they have recorded that why Aristotle left Athens after the death of Plato. Now, he spent 5 years on the coast of Asia Minor as a guest of former students at Assos and Lesbos. So you see, Asia Minor is in Turkey. Now it's in Turkey. So he stayed there for 5 years. It was here that he undertook his pioneering research into marine biology and married his wife, Pythias, with whom he had his only daughter, also named. So you see, there actually he found his inspiration for conducting research into marine biology. You see, he was a biologist, and especially he worked on marine biology because that was the coast of Asia Minor. So that was the coast of Asia Minor. So he was living very close to. He was living very close to. Someone actually is echoing. Could you please just someone actually is echoing? Could you please just turn off my phone? It's muted. It's muted. Okay. Okay. All right. So, and also he got married there. Name of his wife is Pythias, and he had only daughter. Her name was also Pythias. So he named his daughter after his wife. Right. Now, next slide. In 342, Aristotle was summoned to Macedonia by King Philip II to tutor his son, the future Alexander the Great. A meeting of great historical figures that, in the words of one modern commentator, made remarkably little impact on either of them. See that in 342, Aristotle was summoned to Macedonia by King Philip II. So Philip II and his son was Alexander the great fighter or conqueror from Greece. Actually, he was from Macedonia, it's part of Greece now. So, a meeting of great historical figures that, in the words of one modern commentator, say that made remarkably little impact on either of them. That means Aristotle taught Alexander the Great, and one of the modern commentators he said that actually he didn't make that much difference, leave any impact on either of them. Aristotle returns, but he was the tutor. Remember that he taught Alexander the Great. Aristotle taught Alexander the Great for some time. Now, Aristotle returned to Athens in 335 BC. You see, again he went to Athens in 335 BC. As an alien, he couldn't own property, so he rented space in the Lyceum, a formal wrestling school outside the city. Like Plato's Academy, the Lyceum attracted students from throughout the Greek world, developed a curriculum centered on its founder's teachings. So you see, as an alien actually here it means outsiders. Okay? Here, alien doesn't mean that from another world. Here, alien means you are not the native or you're not the resident or citizen of Athens. So who were not the citizens of Athens, they're called alien. And also, in modern English, the immigrants or the migrants, they're also called alien. Hello? Do you follow me what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So he was a stranger, or we can say he was not the resident or the citizen of Athens. So as a result, actually, he didn't have any right to own any property. So he couldn't buy any property, but he can rent, and he did it. So he rented space in the Lyceum. So Lyceum is a place actually, and it was a wrestling school outside the city. So it was a school where people went and they learned wrestling. So he rented that wrestling school and established his school with the same name that is called Lyceum. Like Plato's Academy, the Lyceum attracted students from throughout the Greek world and developed a curriculum centered on its founder's teachings. So you see, the earlier when Plato was alive, when he established the school, the academy, at that time, all the people from all the corners of life in Greece, they were attracted to this school, and people used to go to that school to learn philosophy and different other fields of knowledge. Same thing happened when Aristotle he established his school Lyceum. People started coming from different parts of Greece, and they also started taking lessons under the guidance of Aristotle's. And it was Aristotle's own philosophy that he taught people, that he imparted on people. In accordance with Aristotle's principle of surveying the writings of others as part of the philosophical process, the Lyceum assembled a collection of manuscripts that comprised one of the world's first great libraries. So you see how he contributed to this idea of collecting books or collecting manuscripts. So you see, when he established his school, he started collecting manuscripts, his books, from different parts of Greece and different parts of the world. And that is the world's first great libraries, one of the world's first great libraries. Because at that time, there were also other libraries in Alexandria. It's in Egypt in present days. And Alexandria, actually, it was conquered by Alexander the Great. That's why later on, that great city in Egypt, it was named after him. So now it's called Alexandria. And the Library of Alexandria at that time, it was one of the most famous libraries in the world. And that was you can see the largest one in ancient time. That was the largest uh, library in the world at that time. So that's why it says it's one of the first great libraries. That means there are also other libraries, but the library which was established by Aristotle, that was also a great library at that time. Okay. Now, it was at the Lyceum that Aristotle probably composed most of his approximately 200 words, of which only 31 survive. So you see, he wrote, he was a prolific writer, you can see, and he wrote almost 200 books or 200 manuscripts he developed, or he wrote. And out of these 200 works, only 31 survived. So now only 31 manuscripts are available. In his style, his known words are dense and almost jumbled, suggesting that they were lecture notes for internal use at his school. So you see, when these manuscripts were found by the later generations, so now they found that they were jumbled. Jumbled means, and also dense and almost jumbled. That means lots of things are written together here and there on the paper. You could see that different things are written at different parts of the page. That's why they're jumbled, not organized way. It suggests that actually they were the lecture notes that he used in his school Lyceum. For example, sometimes the teachers also prepare lecture notes on a single piece of paper, just to put the main points so that we don't miss anything in the classroom while delivering the lecture, just to keep ourselves guided. So we do it sometimes, and it's in a jumbled way. And sometimes we don't preserve them, just throw them away when you finish the class. So it's just like this. So suggesting that they were lecture notes for internal use at his school. So he used them just as a lecture notes in his school. The surviving works of Aristotle are grouped into 4 categories. So remember this. So all of his works, those 31st works, those survive. So they are categorized in 4 different categories. For example, the first one is Organon. It's a set of writings that provide a logical toolkit for use in any philosophical or scientific investigation. So you see, Organon, that is a logical toolkit. So if you really want to do any philosophical or scientific investigation or research work, just like research methodology, so Organon actually that will provide you with a logical toolkit how to conduct a research or how to do an investigation. So that was the logical toolkit or research methodology, research analysis, how actually you are going to do it as a researcher. So in the Organon, you can find it. So that was the first group of writings or works of Aristotle. Next come Aristotle's theoretical works, most famously his treatise on animals, parts of animals, movements of animals, etc. So you see, you can see it's a kind of biological stuff. So he wrote treatises. That means he wrote lots of books on, he wrote many treatises or essays on animals. Then cosmology, the physics, a basic inquiry about the nature of matter and change. So this is the part one. He then wrote different treatises or manuscripts on cosmology or the physics. And the metaphysics, that's the last one. There is a quasi-theological investigation of existence itself. So we know what is metaphysics. We have some idea about metaphysics. It's a branch of philosophy. You know it by this time. So he contributed his works are divided into 4 different categories. They're grouped into 4 different categories. For example, Organon, and then on animals, his works on animals, so you can say biological works, and then cosmology, and then metaphysics. So these are the 4 different groups of writings by Aristotle. Okay? Is that okay? Do you get the point here?
Yes, sir.
If you have any question, then I can stop and then I can explain it to you. If you have a question. All right, if you don't have, then we can move on. Now, Aristotle works, again, you see, third, the Aristotle so-called practical works, notably, you see, this is Nicomachean ethics and politics, both deep investigations into the nature of human flourishing on the individual, familial, and societal levels. Sorry, actually, I missed a point there. I got confused. Let me go back to. Right. Now, you see, Organon, under this Organon, actually, we have these animals and cosmology, all these things under this, because they are the part of the investigation. Okay. So that is the thing. Organon is there. Next is theoretical works. So first of all is Organon, then is theoretical works, like works on animals, works on cosmology, and works on metaphysics. So Organon, theoretical works. Organon and theoretical works on animals and cosmology and metaphysics. And the second one is Nicomachean ethics. Actually, Aristotle's contributions to ethics actually is undeniable, and sometimes it's matchless, because he started human ethics and behavior in such a way that he elaborated these ethics things. Now you see that ethics is one of the most important strands or streams of philosophy. So Nicomachean ethics, actually it's his son's name was Nicomachean. So after his son's name, he called it Nicomachean ethics. And politics is the another thing. So both deep investigations is the nature of human flourishing. So Nicomachean ethics and politics, they're together, they're one. So that is the third category. Okay, so different kinds of social, familial, individual, different other stuff they discussed in politics and also in ethics. And finally, that is rhetoric and poetics. Poetics, you're already familiar with that. That is his contribution to the aesthetics, especially in the literature, field of literature. That is the part of rhetoric also. So the rhetoric and poetics examine the finished products of human productivity, including what makes for a convincing argument and how a well-wrought tragedy can instill pathetic fear and pity. So you see that how he contributed in different fields of knowledge. So rhetoric and poetics, you are already familiar with this, and ethics also you could come to know about it, and politics is also there. So here you can see that how actually he contributed in different fields of knowledge, especially in philosophy, in Western philosophy particularly. Now here we will talk about all these categories one by one. So first one is organon. Now the organon, Latin, it means instrument. It's a series of Aristotle's work on logic. What he himself would call analytics, put together around 40 BC by Andronicus of Rhodes and his followers. So you see, these are the instruments that how actually you can analyze different natural phenomenon of the physical world. So for investigation and research work, actually, we are going to use these research toolkits, and he introduced these things. And all these ideas were put together by Andronicus of Rhodes and his followers. So they collected all these things regarding these research and investigation stuff, and they put them together. The set of 6 books includes, so in these categories, you can see there are 6 books that are found, written by Aristotle, and obviously they are compiled by Andronicus. Now, what are these 6 books? Categories on interpretation, prior analytics, posterior analytics, topics, and on sophistical refutations. So you see, these are the books, and you can see it from the names of the books that how much complicated they can be, right? So you see, prior analytics, posterior analytics, and then topics, and sophistical refutations. So these are different books, and using these books, you can improve yourself or develop yourself as a researcher or investigator. The Organon contains Aristotle's work on syllogisms, from the Greek syllogisms or conclusions, a form of reasoning in which a conclusion is drawn from 2 assumed premises. For example, you can find this example everywhere, and it has semblance with the there is deductive method. You can find some semblance. Syllogisms and deductive method, they are quite similar. There are some differences, but they are quite similar. You can see a form of reasoning in which the conclusion is drawn from 2 assumed premises. So we'll have 2 premises or 2 hypotheses. And from these 2 hypotheses, we have to go to a conclusion. So that is the synthesis. Okay. And then you can come to a conclusion. For example, this is a very common example. So that is the deductive way to come to a conclusion. So you say all men are mortal and all Greeks are men, therefore all Greeks are mortal. So first thing, you have to assume that all men are mortal. And then Greek are men. So we have 2 premises or 2 hypotheses. All men are mortal. Then we can see that Greek people, they are men. So if all men are mortal, and if Greeks are men, then of course Greeks are mortal. So this is called syllogisms, and this is a very interesting way, especially when you do research work. This is very important that you have to follow these syllogisms or these deductive method. There is another one that is also called inductive method. So in research work, we have inductive method and deductive method, but especially you can see this way or this kind of logical approach to the investigation or research work. It was propagated by Aristotle himself. Excuse me. Do you have any questions, dear students?
No, sir.
Is it clear that what is Organon, or this group of works by Aristotle,
Yes, sir.
their types?
Yes, sir.
The next thing is metaphysics. Now, Aristotle's metaphysics written quite literally after his physics. So he wrote the book Physics, and after that he wrote Metaphysics. Studies the nature of existence. He called metaphysics the first philosophy of wisdom. His primary area of focus was being qua being, which examined what can be said about being based on what it is, not because of any particular qualities it may have. Do you understand it? What does it say? Hello? Dear students, do you get the point? What does it say? I hope you can see the slide on the screen. So to him, what is metaphysics? He said metaphysics is the first philosophy, and metaphysics is a wisdom. Okay? And what does it examine? It examines life. It examines the physical existence of any substance or any element. So which examine what can be said about being based on what it is, not because of any particular qualities it may have. Get it? What does it say? Can you get it? What it says? Please try. Try to understand it. How actually we can examine an existence on the basis of what?
On the basis of its existence. Yes, sir.
Okay, so yes, as I was saying, that we examine what can be said about being based on what it is, not because of any particular qualities it may have. That means in future it can have a quality. So we're not going to judge a thing on the basis of that, what actually it's going to be in future. Rather, what it is today. On the basis of that, we will try to consider the existence of a component or of an element. Okay, understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Aristotle also muses means he also talked about, or he also thought about, I mean, causation, form, matter, and even a logic-based argument for the existence of God. So he also worked on the existence of God, and he tried to prove it logically with the use of causation, form, matter, and even a logic-based argument for the existence of God. Okay, so you see, he also tried to prove the existence of God by the use of logic. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Now, his contribution to the rhetoric. You know, the rhetoric means the art of persuasion, or you can see that is the art of speech. How can actually you persuade people using your speech? Okay, so to Aristotle, rhetoric is the faculty of observing in any given case the available means of persuasion. The available means of persuasion. That how can you convince people? How can you persuade people to believe in you or whatever actually you are saying? So how can we convince people to believe in that also? So that is the art of persuasion. So and rhetoric actually deals with this. Today actually we call it public speaking. Uh, for example, even when actually you were giving presentation on any particular topic in your academic arena, that is also a part, part of rhetoric. So actually he introduced this idea of giving speech, the oratory, we can say. Okay. He identified three main methods of rhetoric. So there are three main methods of rhetoric. One is ethos, that is ethics, pathos, that is emotional, and logos, that is logic. So remember this, that how actually introduce different ideas. So ethos is ethics, pathos, that is related with your emotion, that's emotion, logos is logic. So he also broke rhetoric into types of speeches. For example, epidactic, that is ceremonial, then forensic, that is judicial, and deliberative, where the audience is required to reach a verdict. So you see, he broke the rhetoric into these types of speeches. So we have epidactic speeches, ceremonial. For example, there is an occasion, there is a ceremony is going on there, and in that ceremony, how actually you can give a lecture or you can deliver a speech. So that will be taught in these epidactic, speech. And in the forensic, you can see that is judicial. When you, especially people who are in the, who are practicing law in the court. So they will use this. That's why it's called forensic or judicial. So it's based on arguments and evidence. These are the things. Especially in the court, the judiciary, we can see this. So, and deliberative, where the audience is required to reach a verdict. So, for example, it is also to some extent related with the court and others. So, but basically, it's for justice, where actually you need to ask for the verdict of a group of people. So there you have to convince them, and then they will give verdicts. Verdicts in favor of you. So deliberative, that is another kind of speaker. So you see, in the methods are three: ethos, pathos, and logos, and also the types of the speeches. There are also three: that is epidactic, forensic, and deliberative. Okay. So that's actually he's called the father of rhetoric. That is his nickname. And obviously, actually, his contribution is completely undeniable. And cannot ignore it in any way. Now, we'll talk about Poetics. See, Aristotle's Poetics was composed around 330 BC and is the earliest extant work of dramatic theory. It is often interpreted as a rebuttal to his teacher Plato's argument that poetry is morally suspect and should therefore be expunged from perfect society. Aristotle takes a different approach in analyzing the purpose of poetry. He argues that creative endeavors like poetry and theatre provides catharsis, or the beneficial purging of emotions through art. So you see, you remember that Plato, he actually promulgated the idea of the society that we call utopian society, as you can remember. An utopian society that is, you can say that is completely an ideal society where everything will be perfect. And Plato, at one point of his proposal or of his writing, when actually he was talking about utopian society, he said that in utopian society there is no place for poets. Okay? Do you get the point what I'm saying? He said that there is no place for the poets in the utopian society. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand it? Because Plato thinks that poetry actually is very powerful and it can derail or it can cause harm to the young people, the young minds, because it has that power. So that's actually he didn't want the poetry, and also he didn't want poets to live in his country, this utopian society. But on the other hand, Aristotle actually he refuted it and he went against this idea. He said that rather it has some, cathartic influence. That means it can, yeah, help you to get a kind of cathartic feeling. That's pity and awe and fear. You can get rid of it through through artwork. So when you enjoy the artwork and a piece of art, actually it gives you a kind of pleasure, and also it relieves you from any kind of bad emotion. So that's why Aristotle thinks that poetry actually it has some positive influence in the society. And also he says it is beneficial purging of emotions. So it helps us to purge, to cleanse all the bad emotions that we have in us. So that's why he says, Aristotle says that poetry is very important. And that's actually he wrote Poetics, where actually he analyzed how poetry and also this theater or dramatic works actually it helps us. And also it's emotionally, it ennobles us, and it edifies us, and also it helps us to get rid of the emotions, the bad emotions that we have in us. Okay, so there is a difference between the master and student, or teacher and student. Okay, now I think our time is up, right? We're out of time, I think. Is it over, or we still have time? Do you have time? Should I stop it here? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Time is over, I think, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, then I don't want to just break your questions, and let's finish it here. So that's all from me from today's discussion. So with that note, I'd like to conclude today's session. So if you have any question, then I would like to answer them, please. So do you have any question or any comments about today's session? Any question? Or any part of today's discussion that you failed to grab? Hello? Do you have any questions?
No, sir. No, sir.
Right then in that case, I'd like to say adieu just for today. So hopefully we'll meet again tomorrow, right? So take care. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Walaikum assalam.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Assalam.